Can anyone hear us?
I can hear you.
For those of you online, we're dealing with some technical issues and we will get started shortly.
Well, that's interesting. I hear an echo.
No, you're muted. So. Is anybody else opposite? Is this so? Can't get this to get off the screen.
Yeah. Yes, we can go ahead and get started. I don't see Matt online. Okay. I'll call the meeting to order. It's 6:40 p.m. And I'll look to Eric to take the roll, please. Okay. Alex Dukeman.
Here.
Melinda Ellswick.
Here.
Jim Woodward.
Here.
Cash Parker. Here. Ken Chu.
Here.
Samantha Hurst.
Here.
And Matt Crabtree is absent. For staff is Eric Sampson and Brian Isom with Community Development.
All right. Thanks, Eric. Next, number 2 is approval of the minutes. Is there any discussion, or if there is none, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the August 20th, 2025 meeting?
I'll move the minutes of August 20th,
All right.
2025.
There's a motion by Jim Woodward. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I think I heard Alex first, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, beginning with those in the room, say aye.
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 And anyone online?
Aye.
That's unanimous on ayes for approval of the minutes. The minutes are approved. Number 3, public forum. I do not see anyone from the public present in the room. Is there anyone online, Eric? All right. That moves us to item number 4, non-conforming uses in residential zones. And Brian, you are presenting on that. You have the floor.
Give me just a moment. We're making sure that the meeting is being recorded
Sure.
before we get through going on this. Yeah, I'm loading it up. Thanks, Mark.
All yours, Brian.
Okay.
Thanks.
So what I'll do is I'll just run through the presentation as we gave it to council at our study session in August on the work that we're doing and kind of why we're going this direction. So the first thing is to define what a non-conforming use is to anybody that doesn't read development code on a regular basis. In short, it's a use that was at one point legal that through some form of zoning action is now considered illegal. So if you think about any of these folks, if you know any of these places, we have King Construction on the left, we have Leonard's Retail in the middle, and then we have the God Save the Cream establishment on the right. They haven't always been this exact user, but at some point there was a commercial entity in each one of these locations. Then through municipal zoning changes, they've become residential districts. But the use can always stay. The way our zoning code works is if we change the code, whatever was going on at that time can stay. But if you start to touch it or move it or do anything with it, then it starts to have to conform to what our code. So a lot of these uses were in existence long time ago. I understand that grocery store. I don't know if anybody's been in this community for a long time. That was a grocery store on the far right a long time ago. And it's been a number of uses, and I'll explain what makes it difficult for us going forward. So what does that non-conforming use status mean? In short, it means that they can exist, but they can't really do a whole lot of improving, and they can't change. So a lot of times we'll have properties that sit vacant. If they sit vacant for more than 6 months, then they are required by our code to actually conform to unallowed land use. Since all these properties are in single-family districts, almost all of them would have to be some form of residential or some type of institutional use to be able to conform. And most of them, that becomes an issue because they demand a market price of a commercial property, but you wouldn't be able to purchase it and redevelop it as a residential necessarily and make money off of it, because they're selling it at a commercial rate when the reality is it would be more like a residential rate. So it makes it really difficult for these properties to really evolve over time. I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit. But the non-conforming use status does, what it does to a property is it can disincentivize investment in the property. So part of the non-conforming use status is kind of it's what's called the act of God clause. If something happens to this property to which they have to rebuild, meaning say it burns down or a portion of it burns down, and then they try to rebuild, if the cost to rebuild is a certain percentage of the actual cost of the structures or everything along those lines with their development, there's a limit at which the city says, no, you can't rebuild anymore. You have to just scrape it and build something that's conform. So a lot of people won't invest their money into a property that if something happens, they may never be able to rebuild. Others are, like I talked about, is, they're expecting a commercial value for a sale rather than what the residential sales price, which is reflected in that neighborhood. A lot of these properties, almost all of them, also contain non-conforming structures. So structures built in setbacks, almost all of them are built in setbacks in some form or fashion, or they don't meet parking requirements, they don't have conforming lot conditions. There's a number of non-conformities. These things, almost every one of them predate our zoning code. Some of them go back to, I think we looked at when they were built, some built as early as 1911 and others all the way through the 1950s. So these are some of our older buildings in town. Again, here's a few examples. You might know some of these. The far top right or top left is Kane Construction. That's just on the east side of Quincy, or just on the east side of Broadway on Quincy. The top right is Quincy Barber Shop. Bottom right is 501 East Dartmouth. Right now it's vacant, but it's non-conforming use status as an office. And then the bottom left, this is probably one of our more intriguing ones, is God Save the Cream. Their non-conformity is for a grocery store. So if you've ever asked yourself, why don't these folks sell ice cream and ice cream cones? Because of us. Their non-conforming use and their definition of a grocery store says that all of their goods have to be sold for household consumption. So they have to sell all their ice cream in a container. They can't sell it in an ice cream. And that's simply because of the zoning rules. So what we started doing, we got some direction from council to come in and take a look at these. So what we started was going through county records and non-conforming use registrations that we have and identifying any of these that still exist in our city. And at the time we started this, there were 14. Two, the one on West Union, was part of a plan unit development project that was rezoned and approved. I think the ordinance went into effect on September 5th. So that one goes away. And that one's down on the bottom left. I realize now you can't see all the numbers on that map very well. And then the one on South Huron, the property owners, we reached out to them and they actually intend on converting their space into residential, which would then make it a conforming use. So it would be removed off this list. So that leaves us with 12. The bulk of them are in southern parts of Inglewood. So you'll see a line starting from the top. We have Dartmouth that has 2. And then towards the middle, you have Quincy that has 5 of these non-conforming uses. And then down at the very bottom, we have Bellevue that has 2. So our comprehensive plan talks a lot about improving our neighborhood identities and increasing diverse retail offerings and opportunities. And as planners, we look at these as huge opportunities to create very unique environments within our neighborhoods. So I don't know if anybody's been to areas like Pearl Street north of here. The neighborhood around there takes a lot of ownership into these small commercial pockets. And we would anticipate that a change in this code could do the same thing for these businesses. We already know that Quincy Barber Shop has a pretty big following. Almost everybody that I talk to, aside from people like me that don't have to go get a haircut at any type of establishment, they know where that place is. And God Save the Cream has a pretty big following as well. So we're looking at trying to expand those opportunities for those folks, but making sure that we're looking at our comprehensive plan to show why we're doing what we're doing. The other place we started was we looked across the country to see, has anybody done this before? And in fact, someone did. The city of Spokane, Washington did this, I think, 2018 or 2019. They did almost exactly what we've talked about trying to do, and giving non-conforming uses a lot more opportunity to what I say thrive rather than just survive. So what they did was they created a clause in their code called existing neighborhood commercial structures and residential zones. They created an administrative hearing process to allow these businesses to change uses. So you start with your one non-conforming use, And their city said, here's the range of uses you can go between. You can't expand the site, but you can do business expansions. Parking is done project by project. They prohibit drive-throughs, and then they have special site standards for each project. The administrative process is allowed, but that hearing officer can then boost it up to a more robust hearing process. So like think Planning and Zoning Commission, Board of Adjustment and Appeals, something along that nature. So our team, mainly Will and Eric and myself and Brooke, actually I think all of us were involved at some point in time. We did a Planning and Zoning Commission study session in July. Then we started reaching out to various non-conforming use business and property owners to basically ask what they would want. What are their thoughts on where this could go? What would they want to do with their lot? We went to 3 neighborhood night events and then the Inglewood Block Party on August 23rd. So we did a lot of neighborhood engagement. And so what you'll see in here is what our Planning and Zoning Commission has said, our Planning and Zoning Commission, the neighborhood outreach, and then the business owners and property owners as well. So what we asked our council to consider is, would they want to give non-conforming residential uses or non-conforming uses? Oh, sorry, this is a different section. What we've done so far with our code, in Title 16, we gave non-conforming residential uses that are located in residential districts the ability to expand. So if you think about a duplex in a single-family district, they actually have the ability to expand now to the same extent that a single-family home does, if it existed at that time. You couldn't build it brand new, but it does have some opportunities to expand. Same thing with non-conforming setbacks. Anybody that had non-conforming setbacks, we have a lot more opportunity to provide expansions through our adopted, or through the Code Next adopted development code. More recently, we went through an exercise where we looked at home occupations. So think about people working out of their home, and we expanded allowances through that. For one of the items that people had asked for specifically was to be able to grow plants, think flowers or produce in their backyard and be able to sell it at a farm stand in front of their home. That was actually prohibited about a year ago. Now it's something that's allowed. We also created what's called the special exception for home occupations section of our code that says if someone wants to do a home occupation that doesn't meet all of our performance criteria, they can go to our Planning and Zoning Commission and ask for extra special permission to do these things. The only thing that it doesn't cover are uses that would be technically prohibited by that section. That's the only thing that they couldn't ask for a little bit of relief on, but it provides an opportunity for relief in other situations. The other things we talked to our council about were thinking about benign land use types that could be beneficial to local neighborhoods and communities. And then should these abilities for commercial uses, should they have the ability to expand their structure, not necessarily expand their site, we get that part, but could they expand their structure if they needed, another 50 square feet or 100 square feet? So we had, I think, a series of 4 questions or kind of items. The first one was, should non-conforming uses be able to change to another non-conforming use? Options we gave were 1, no, just keep all the regulations as is, no changes. 2, allow non-conforming uses to convert to either public or institutional or commercial uses that are allowed within a certain zoning district. What we did was we chose the least intense mixed use district, and it came with a series of, I think, 7 or 8 different land uses that were already allowed. So we would say we'll just keep it within a district that already exists. We'll point back to that. Or option 3, create a short list of uses that they can convert to. Ones that may not all be allowed through option 2, but ones that we've heard from our community outreach that people would like in their neighborhood. So that's anything from medical service and office, personal service. So if you're thinking about barber shops, things like that, retail grocery stores, food and beverage services, so restaurants, And a lot of these are already existing in some form or fashion in some of those non-conforming uses. So what our goal was to look at what's already here and expand a little bit based on what we've heard from our public. And so from our commission, we heard that they prefer a very specific list of uses that are unique to the non-conforming use category, but we need to clearly define the uses and their limitations. So at no point do they want it to turn into mainly pointing out things that are not allowed or being very specific as to like, this is all that is allowed, no more. Property and business owners, as you can imagine, were excited to have any kind of flexibility. So they were very excited. The general public, we can read it here. The public, we asked if they should be able to transition between medical offices, general offices, personal services, and dependent care. We asked 2 questions to the general public. The first one was the most benign use categories, and most of them said yes. And then we asked a follow-up question of what about restaurants, retail stores, and grocery stores? And they were both unanimous yeses. In fact, a lot of residents supported other food and beverage services, such as brew pubs. Folks wanted to see brew pubs in their neighborhoods, small local places. Second item we talked to folks about was, what about expanding the structure, expanding the building? The options we provide are keep the regulations as is, allow expansions up to the building and lot standards allowed for the base zoning district. So whatever district you exist in, those are the standards that you get to expand to. That one's pretty difficult because most of these businesses and sites already blow their lot coverage way out of the water. So they're already past any opportunities to expand. Option 3, allow expansions up to the building and lot standards allowed, again, in the MUR3A, so that's the least intensive mixed use district. And then option 4 would allow unique developments based on each situation. So I think option 4 is more based on what we saw in Spokane. So everything is kind of a case by case basis. And we'll get to how it's done later, but that one would likely be a public hearing for each case. So anytime somebody wanted to expand something like that, they'd have to go to some form of public. This was just kind of a comparison that our team looked at in the R1A, C, and R2B district. That's the 3 districts where you'll primarily find these non-conforming commercial uses. And then MUR3A, which was option 3. So you can see that lot coverage in the R1 and R2 districts is very low, 40% and 50%. MUR3A, it bumps up to 70%. So they would get some opportunity for additional lot coverage if we looked at the MUR3A district. But your front setbacks are 25 feet for all of these, and rears are 20 feet. And I would say probably around 80% of these businesses blow that front setback out of the water. They're pushed right up against the street or against their side setback. So when we reached out to our commission, they preferred a more flexible and unique set of standards by right for non-conforming uses, with options to expand allowances through a hearing process. So set small limitations on what someone could do by just getting a building permit. But then if they chose to exceed that, they would have to come in and sit down before a board and visit with neighbors, and we would get the opportunity to hear from the people around the project. Business and property owners, most felt like they could encroach into even the MUR3A setbacks and lot coverage. They liked additional flexibility. And again, their preference would be to do everything by right. So being able to allow them to do everything just through a building permit, but understood the complexity of doing that and the intricacy of doing that, and that they would still be okay to do it through a public hearing process as well. But mainly just the fact that they have an opportunity to do it at all. The general public said, yes, they're in favor of allowing some expansions, but we had handwritten comments. We did kind of a dot diagram, had a lot of handwritten comments on there that there should be limitations. Don't just let somebody cover up an entire lot or, build 2 or 3 stories. They should have limitations placed on expansions to keep them fairly small. allowing updated site conditions. So think parking, landscaping, outdoor seating, things of that nature. Currently, they're all prohibited. And so option 1 would be to keep those prohibited. Option 2, allow updates based on what the base zoning district is, which gets a little bit complicated because most of the base zoning districts don't allow commercial parking, or allow updates based on unique developments and situations. So again, we only have 12 of these instances that we've been able to find. And so it would really be like one-offs for each one, and looking at, if we go to a commission or a board, how do we do this? Our Planning and Zoning Commission preferred a more flexible and unique set of standards again. Property and business owners, again, they wanted allowances for outdoor seating and accessory uses. We've had some of the non-conforming businesses request to add things like community gardens, and our code right now is really unclear on whether they could add this additional accessory use, which is, supposed to be secondary to a primary use. But to us, when we read our non-conforming use status, it says you cannot expand the non-conformity. So adding an accessory use to us would be expanding a non-conformity, which again, technically not allowed. So there was some discussion about that. Public again is in favor, but with limitations. They were on board with outdoor seating areas for restaurants. The last thing that we talked to our council and everyone about was, mainly our council and our commission, was how would we implement something like that? So we have existing processes already in place that we could kind of mimic to go through this. So the first one is a by right decision. So everything is made, every decision is made by staff, everything is administrative. It keeps costs down for the business owner, and it keeps time down for how long it takes to get a permit. The next level would be a development director decision. So that would be more akin to an administrative adjustment. That requires a 15-day posted notice on site before our director makes a decision. And it has a cost for that application, $250. And this is just the cost for these applications, not for what we're looking at. The next level up would be a Planning and Zoning Commission decision. This would be more in line with the special exception for home occupations or a conditional use permit process. There's a 15-day posted notice plus a public hearing, and that cost is $600. And then for a city council decision, that's probably the most lengthy. That would be a staff review plus neighborhood meeting plus 15-day posting time frame plus 2 public hearings, 1 at Planning and Zoning Commission, 1 at City Council, and then 2 readings at City Council. And the minimum charge for that one, that application, is $1,050. So from left to right, you have a speedier process with less cost for business owners. On the right, you have higher cost for business owners, but more opportunity for public input and for council input. So that's kind of how we framed, like, where do we want this decision to go? Or do we split it up? Like, is there an opportunity to have one set of decisions that can be made one way and a second set of decisions made the second way? Planning and Zoning Commission was in favor of making the standards as flexible as they could by right, but keep the options in for special exception process for property owners that wanted to go beyond what's allowed by right. So that's very similar to what we created for our home occupation special exception. Business owners and property owners, again, more time and cost associated with these kind of approvals can be really prohibitive towards small business. So they're not necessarily saying that everything had to be done by right, but I think their thought was it would stop with Planning and Zoning Commission. The city council decision, instead of taking maybe a month to 2 months, can take 6 months, 4 to 6 months, and that may be too cost prohibitive. The public definitely felt like property owners next door or adjacent to the property should be made aware of potential change. Some additional thoughts that we heard from our business owners are, should non-conforming uses be allowed to add residential units up to what's allowed in the base zoning district? So public sentiment was pretty mixed, and our council really did not like this idea. So this likely won't move forward. Pass-through windows be added for walk-up foot traffic. That one we got a lot of buy-in from the general public when we asked questions about that, and from council. For certain uses, I think they find that would be prohibitive, or not prohibitive, permissive, and it might allow, at least from a planning side, you might think that may be a way to spur more foot traffic by providing something like that. More people might be apt to walk there if they know they can just reach in through the window and get their to-go order. One of the last folks asked if their property taxes would go up. We're still reaching out to the county to find out what their thoughts would be on that. I know that's a lot, and it's like drinking through a fire hose with all of that, but that's kind of where we're going. What we heard from our council so far, and we have another study session scheduled in October. We can send you the dates for that one. Is there's certain land uses that they feel would be appropriate to switch back and forth with, but I think there's still some parts of this they're trying to sort through, and that they need to they're trying to understand a lot better, because this would be a big change. We did have one council member that mentioned that they think we should be allowing corner stores, even to be built new, not just to allow the conversion of these 12 spaces. So we've kind of got a whole lot of spectrum to work through, but we'll have some more, at least we'll have some more intact drafts in the October study session for council to weigh in on. So I'll open it up for any questions if you have any. Sure.
I have a comment, I guess. What triggered me when I when I first saw your presentation to council was the Bob's Grocery Store, because back a couple years ago, Lauren and I compiled a neighborhood history, excuse me, which was intended to be attached to the neighborhood district maps, so that people could know the history of their neighborhood. And the illustration for the Hawthorne neighborhood was Bob's Grocery Store. So we didn't know it started business in the 1950s, shut down in the 90s. But, and even when it was a grocery store, they weren't allowed to sell produce, for instance. They had to sell everything that was already packaged. So that hasn't actually changed. But I'd hate to see something like that's been historic, an anchor of a historic neighborhood, be prohibited.
Right, and so would we. We're trying to expand their opportunities to make their sites more viable, so that in a lot of instances, at least when you look through the records that the city of Spokane worked through, a lot of their sites were run down. We're fortunate that we're small enough that not every one of ours is like that. I would say we have one or two that have deteriorated a little bit, but other folks have kept others up. So yeah, that's part of our other aim, is to give enough opportunity to these locations that, they'll invest back into those buildings. So that's part of our perspective. And then, Jim, to your question, yes, we did. One of the items that we included and heard from council is personal services, which covers barber shops, beauticians, nail salons, things like that.
And Was there a decision? Was there kind of feedback on that? I know there's a number of them, and I know that they try and keep it real quiet and go by appointment only.
So, yeah, so on, as far as home occupations go, yeah, they're allowed now by code. So nobody has to just do by appointment only. There's a strict list of rules that someone would have to follow. The rules don't apply the same to these because they're commercial businesses. But yes, if somebody, the way we're drafting it right now, yeah, somebody could switch one of these if, this Kane Construction Building decided tomorrow that they want to become a barber shop. That could potentially happen through these changes.
Okay. And the second question I have is the 6-month period seems short. I know of a case here that probably goes back into the 80s where there was a candy store, grocery store type thing on the block that I live, and the people that ran it, the husband and wife, both of them ended up passing away, elderly couple, and their heirs couldn't get it taken care of in 6 months, and it converted back. Couldn't get it taken care of, and what I mean by that was get it sold to somebody that would continue operating. And I'm just wondering if 6 months is long enough period, or if that could be extended through.
Certainly, that's a great question. We have talked about that quite a bit. Is 6 months long enough? Is it too long? Part of the change here would actually give more opportunity. So a lot of times what people are having issues with, and I'll use 501 East Dartmouth, for example, that one is a non-conforming use for an office. The property owner has had numerous clients come in for doctor's offices. Those don't fit in the same category. So while it might make sense practically, we have to follow our zoning code very strictly. And right now, they're not the same thing. So we've had to tell him on numerous occasions, those clients can't sign a lease there because it just doesn't work. It doesn't meet our nonconformity statutes. And so, yeah, then that 6-month issue comes up. And how do they find it? Another planning thought we have is at that point, they're just trying to force people into a location, and we don't get what we're trying to get out of this, which is a healthy business environment in Inglewood. So, yeah, what the end game is to try to give them a lot more opportunities to lease these business sites up, using a myriad of things of, there's different land uses that are available to them rather than just one tiny niche that they have to go find. But that's a great question, and we can certainly talk to council about whether they want to expand that window in these instances.
Or at least give a way to.
Certainly. And the other half of that is it's so hard for us to prove that nobody has been in there. If somebody doesn't close out their business license, how do I know that they haven't been operating? They are likely still getting utility bills that are getting paid. And it makes it even more cumbersome on us to try to prove, this person hasn't been in this building for 6 months, without having Eric or myself sit there and watch to see if someone walks in there to go to a business. So it makes it a little bit more difficult on our end. So I think this kind of approach just makes a whole lot of sense. And it was part of what I kind of go back to is when we worked on Code Next, one of the guiding principles of that was make the right things easy. This is one way we can make the right thing easy.
I have a quick question. So, was an assessment done if any of these 12 or 13 properties have any kind of historic significance for the city of Inglewood?
We certainly did not do any kind of historic assessment. I don't know if they were any of them were part of the opinion survey. But if we get any type of local, certified local government back, and we hear back that we have that, I mean, that's something that we could certainly look at with all of these businesses, because then we'll have a little bit more funding, or a little bit of funding, where we can do surveys of places. And I have a feeling we have a very long list of places that we would like to survey in Inglewood, since most of our city was built before at least more than 50 years ago.
Yeah, I would just encourage that investigation and exploration before, just in preparation in case, a property owner decides to move forward with renovations to a property that could have some significant history for Inglewood. That's all.
So I have a question, and it may be kind of a dumb question, so forgive me if it is, but I live in the vicinity of both 501 East Dartmouth and the Creamery, and then I happen to live next to a building that was one of these neighborhood grocery stores many, many years ago, I think not since the 70s or 80s, and it's been in residential use for quite some time. Because it's been in residential use for quite some time, that's not non-conforming, correct?
So the structure may be, but we're not looking at those uses. If something is transitioned into residential and it's now conforming land use wise, we're not approaching those. We are leaving it open for someone to have that discussion later, because they may, depending on how this is kind of like a trial run of places, and if this works well, then somebody may want to open it back up to other existing structures. I only say that because that's how the city of Spokane did it. Was they opened it up to everything, whether it was currently non-conforming use or was a previous non-conforming use. It was just open up to all. We're just opening it up to this tiny little window of 12.
That makes sense. That's what I was assuming. And Melinda or others probably know better than I do. I think there are a number of those around Inglewood that were previously non-conforming, like the structure that's next to my house. But that makes sense. That's why it didn't show up on this list. That's why I asked the question.
You're correct. I think of one, I think it's on, trying to think of how I come to work, down Girard. There's a one right on the corner of Girard, I think just west of Logan, that I see every morning on my way to work.
I'm familiar with that one too. Thank you. That makes sense. I appreciate it. Are there other questions for Brian? All right. Seeing none, thank you very much, Brian. That was very informative. Do you have a sense, I guess I will leave this parting question with you. Do you have a sense of what the timetable is for council to look at this and provide guidance? Did they leave you with any sense of that?
So we'll go back in October. We won't go back for any kind of code amendments likely until after the election. So we don't like to split things up. So we'll go back probably sometime in, depending on what kind of direction we get from council. They could tell us to go back to the drawing board completely or come back sooner, but it likely will be after the election. Okay. Plus with our notice requirements, it really will be after the election sometime because it takes us months to adopt. Most of you know this, you were part of our code process. It takes months to get through the public hearing process on amending our zoning.
Makes sense. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Number 5, the CLG update. Eric, I assume that's yours.
Yep. And I had reached out to Lindsay this morning as well. I sent her an email, and she was going to reach out to National Park Service because she hasn't heard anything from them in a while. Most likely it's getting delayed a little bit longer than we would like due to the funding cuts at the federal level for the National Park Service. But she is going to circle back with me with any information that she has, and I will send that out on an email blast for you all, so you know. But I'm expecting it should be any time.
Great. Any questions for Eric? Hearing none, seeing none. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate the update. Number 6, we'll stay with you, staff's choice.
Yeah, I just had the one item here. This is from the city attorney's office, and it's basically a reference guide for quasi-judicial hearings, since you are now a quasi-judicial board. So when we do get that landmark application in, these will be handy guideline for you to have. Melinda, I will send this to you via email.
I already got it.
Okay, perfect. But aside from that, that is all I had. Do you have anything, Brian? That's it for me.
Do you mind sending it to everyone via email?
Yeah, sure thing.
I'll lose the piece of paper.
Yeah.
So, thanks. That brings us to Commissioner's Choice. Melinda, I'll start with you. Do you have anything for Commissioner's Choice?
No, not beyond what I've already contributed. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then I'll just move around the table, starting to my left. Alex, do you have anything for Commissioner's Choice?
Nothing from me.
Thanks. Samantha?
No.
Jim?
Yes, I have a question. On the CLG update or the, not the update, but the proposed, or what we've done, is there any written stuff on that some of us new people could actually get a copy of? So we are more familiar with what we're even talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I can send you, and I think you are new, I will send you a copy of the application that we submitted.
That'd be
To
great.
State and National Park Service.
And all the flyers that we sent the commission, like what the benefits.
Oh, yes, I'll include that as well.
Yeah, and like the presentation that we did for council
Yeah, I
probably
can include that too.
contains most of the information you would need to know that I feel like we did numerous times. It worked finally, but it took a little bit. Ken, anything for Commissioner's Choice?
I don't know if Eric actually provided an update, but we hit up a couple of the neighborhood nights and had some pretty good traction, met some good people, talked about applying for historic landmark status, and talked about the application for CLG. I will say that we didn't get a ton of pushback or questions, but the one question that did come up the most was this question of whether or not people who don't own the properties can move to designate the property as a historic property, which is interesting. I don't know if you noticed, but I think either this past week or the week before, there was an article, I think it was in the Denver Post or something, about a property just in Wash Park where an owner who has a property and his neighbors have moved to designate the property as a historic property in order to block them from, I think, tearing down the property and building a new one. So just something to be aware of.
Yeah, that does seem to be a common question, which of course, for those who are new and may not know, no, you cannot designate a property without the owner's consent under the ordinance that was passed in Inglewood. So that process does not work the same way it does in the city and county of Denver.
And I think that conversation was brought up and it was not looked upon very favorably from going to council. I think a few times in the past, council did not have the appetite to have what is considered a hostile designation.
And it was because I was involved in a number of those presentations to council. It was made very clear repeatedly that that was not the process that would be passed in our ordinance here. Yes, I think council seemed to unanimously, all iterations of council that we presented to seemed to unanimously share that concern. So we made it clear that that would not be part of the ordinance that we were proposing. So thank you for doing that, by the way, Ken, going out and talking to people. I was out of town for the block party, unfortunately, but I know a lot of people go to that. And yeah, that concern, I've also done the citizens planning school that Brian put on, and there were a lot of questions. I think I reported back to the commission about our process, and that was one that came up in there as well. It is a very common question about the process.
I would say what I noticed, Eric and I and Jim was with us too at the Inglewood block party, is if you locate this booth next to the Historic Preservation Society booth, you tend to get a lot more folks that go to their booth and then kind of move over into our booth. So just FYI for when you're planning out future events.
That's good.
Well, you know, and maybe one answer for those people, we can designate neighborhoods that contain what are considered non-conforming properties, newer builds or something, but the neighborhood is still historic. We haven't gotten that far yet, but it's a possibility.
Yes. Although that still requires a certain percentage of people in that neighborhood to consent to that. So,
Yeah.
good. I don't have anything for Commissioner's Choice other than thank you, Brian, for that presentation. That was informative. I'm sure you've given that, it sounds like, several times at this point, so you've got it dialed in. Thanks for doing that. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Sorry, did you have something else, Ken? I asked her up front. Yep. All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, moved and seconded. It is 7:27 p.m. Thanks, everyone.